Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year. For those who don't know me, I'm Jesse, and you're watching Jesse's Occupational Awareness Show, which focuses on stories about being in TDCJ, Texas Department of Criminal Justice Penitentiary. In the last video, I introduced the new channel that I had started up, Prison Talks with Jesse. That one is focused on audiobook style, where I just sit and tell some of my older stories. It's a way for me to recap and add to those stories and catch up to where we are. However, I did promise all the current viewers who are following the new videos that I put out right now that this channel wasn't going to end. It's not. I'm working on both right now, doing a little bit of editing, getting into a little bit of that, dabbling into it. So stand by for good things to come. One of the more requested topics that I've had, in addition to corruption at TDCJ, is contraband in TDC. And I had thought about it. I wasn't really sure if I could speak much on it. But with the time away from the videos and doing the new audiobook style, it gives me a chance to focus, recap, and think about times that I had there. And I realized, man, I can do a whole series on contraband. So that's what we're going to do. I did the War Story series on not every day was a knockdown, drag out fight affair. There was a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of verbal assaults. That was every single day. But who wants to listen to, I went to work and cell number 83 yelled at me? No mo. No mo. Nobody. I can only tell that kind of story so many times. But contraband, when I sat back and thought about it, so without wasting time, let's get into that. I say without wasting time, I would like to address a few of the comments some of the viewers have had. I've had a lot of comments from individuals that are getting ready to hire on, who have hired on, signed their pre-agreement, but are waiting to go to the academy, asking about exams. And there seems to be concern about it. I'm assuming what they're talking about are tests, paper exams that are going to be administered while they're in the academy, and possibly on a pass-fail basis. I'm not exactly sure what the current curriculum is right now. I know that when I went through in 2013, we got this big, thick book. It had a red cover on it, and it was a fill-in-the-blank kind of a book. And when we would start a class, we would open it up to the said topic, and as the instructor would show the PowerPoints to the class, we would fill in the book, and that was essentially our study guide. If we did take a test, I really don't remember it. I'm fairly certain there was some kind of a multiple choice that we did do. If we did, it wasn't memorable enough to me to make an impression for me to remember. So where I'm going with that is, it wasn't memorable enough to fail out of the academy. I don't know of anybody who didn't pass any kind of a test. Maybe some for the PAT. I've talked about that in previous videos. They are available in the archives. But as far as paper exams, I don't remember anybody failing them. To anybody who's about to hire on to go through, I can more than almost guarantee you, the state needs COs. If you can get through the interview process and the application process, about the only thing that's going to disenroll you during the academy is if you pop positive on a drug test, if you just don't show up to class one day, or if you're given an exam and you just stand up and say, I'm not going to do this. If you are handed an exam in the academy and you put your name on it and you can answer the questions and you pay attention to the topics, these topics are not calculus, geometry, write an essay on the the Revolutionary War in America. It's not going to be anything to that topic. I promise you it's not. These instructors are going to set you up for success. You're going to pass your exams. The state needs people to stand watch and to work. Listen to what the instructors say, take the exam. I promise you, you're going to pass. Please don't sweat them. With that said, let's get into the topic. TDCJ contraband. Okay? It is absolutely everywhere. Every single where. To the point that units have specific contraband interdiction teams. SITs. CIT. And don't think when the SIT shows up that the inmates aren't exactly thrilled to see them. So, when you think of contraband, okay, you watch the movies, Shawshank Redemption, American Me, Blood In, Blood Out. What are some of the other more popular ones? It doesn't matter. When you think of contraband, you probably think of drugs, narcotics, swords, shanks getting smuggled in. You might have a very narrow-minded view of what contraband. Contraband, by definition, at TDCJ and probably just about any other kind of penitentiary in the United States, is any object that has been altered from its original state of use. Period. Okay? Anything in its original state, if it's used for anything other than what it was intended for by the manufacturer, if it's used for anything else, that's contraband and is to be confiscated. I'm going to give an example. Let's take me as a corrections officer, back when I was one. Okay, I go to the commissary, I buy a sports drink. Cool. It wasn't Powerade, it wasn't Gatorade, it was some kind of weird state-named brand that was just flavored water called sports drink. Okay? I consume that beverage. All right? I then take that bottle, I fill it up with water from the sink. Now, that bottle's been labeled for sports drink. What's inside of it? Strictly water. That bottle has now been altered from its intended use. It was intended for a sports drink and to be thrown away. That way the manufacturer can continue to make money. I now, as a CO, have introduced contraband into the facility. At that point, it's to be confiscated, and I should be written up for possession of contraband. That simple. Done. Period. However, there are a lot more shades of gray than that. There is no black and white whatsoever at TDCJ. There is in the academy, but once you get out to the unit, you're going to see all kinds of freaking shades of gray. So, where we're going to go with this series, I'm going to talk about different sources of contraband. I'm going to do my best to stay on topic. We know that I like to ramble. I want to do topics of weapon-made contraband, drug use contraband, items that were intended for certain use but are now used for other non-harmful, non-weapon offense, shower nozzles, sink nozzles, toilet use, hygiene use, things like that. So if someone tunes into this and they're expecting to hear me talk about how dope is manufactured, which I can get into that just a little bit, or how alcohol is manufactured, I can certainly get into that. When you are walking down the tier and you hear a bag of Pruno explode because the guy that was making it didn't decide to burp the bag and it burst and it sounds like a gunshot goes off, and you look in the cell and this raw ass gas of alcohol and rotten fruit and ferment hits you in the face, it's just revolting. You get what we call a contact drunk, an instant drunk. It's just absolutely nasty. I'm going to talk about that. And we'll see how long the series drags out for the individuals that enjoy hearing about it. So, what do we want to get into today? I think for today, we'll talk a little bit about some of the less controversial, was that even a word? Less conventional items that inmates could use and manufacture and make for simple things that we here have at home. When you turn on your sink, what happens? Water comes out of the nozzle. Which way does it go? It goes down toward into the sink. You put your hands under it, water comes down onto your hands. I'm not sure too much about general population, can't quote on it. I was a seg boss, as we all know. When they pushed the button in their sink, the nozzle was curved, trying to use my finger, the nozzle was curved up and the water came up and out. It didn't shoot out like a jet. It drizzled itself out over the end. All right. And typically with the water pressure, it could be a poor, pathetic trickle. Not much to it. So it was difficult for them to collect water and things to shave with. Most of them just dealt with it. What a lot of them would do, they'd take some of the hot sauce bottles that they could get. In a previous video that I have, items that could be bought from commissary, I showed some of the plastic bottles of hot sauce. So take any kind of plastic bottle that you can get, a little one, okay? They would heat these items up, either hold it over the light source in their cell, heat it up, melt it down, and they all had ways of getting knives. Get into that in a previous video, and they could cut and shave it. They would basically make a nozzle, and this nozzle could fit down inside, pretend my hand's not here, and it could make a crook. And with enough pushes of the button, it would build up some force and pressure, and they had a sink nozzle. Harmless? Absolutely. Contraband? 100%. Supposed to be confiscated. Another one, shower nozzles. As I talked about in one of the videos about the showers, there was a nozzle. It would be overhead. It would either shoot a straight stream straight out or a fog that just kind of went everywhere and didn't really hit the inmate at all. They had to dance around in the shower to try to get that on them. So that'd probably piss just about anybody off. I know it would me. They only had a limited amount of time in there as well. So that was a way they could fashion a shower nozzle. Same kind of bottle. Turn it over on the other end. Okay, one end of it has a cap on it. They could take a stabbing type object, poke holes in it. They could then take the other end. Sorry, my cat just ran past me. Scared the hell out of me. What is she getting at? I'm sorry. They could cut the other end of it off, melt that down, form it into a shape. This could essentially be fashioned up around where the shower nozzle went. They'd have to get creative with it, form it, shape it. Sometimes they'd find ways to do it in the shower. I never caught anybody that did, but they could do it. And it would actually mold around that shower nozzle. And they could hold it in place, press on the button, and it would make a conventional shower nozzle with the holes in the bottom of the cap that they had. Water pressure wouldn't be the greatest, but it was still a rain-like shower nozzle that they could use. That's just one example of that. Some of the more dangerous ones that they could use, trafficking and trading. Ways that they could get items from each other's cells and so forth. They use fishing lines. I talked about this a little bit in other videos, get into it a little bit more. They take a tube of toothpaste. It'd have a screw-on cap. All right. Once it would get relatively empty, we'd screw that cap back on. Flatten it out just about as flat as it could get. Sometimes the cap would be a little bit too big and it couldn't fit under the door. Okay, picture me. The big door, look at your bathroom door, close it. There's a little gap between the floor and where the door is. All sizes are going to differ. The rolling doors there in SEG were the same way, except this gap was actually pretty significant. You could just about stick a portion of a bare foot up under it. So they didn't have trouble getting things out of the bottom of the crack of these doors. They take that tube of toothpaste, and at the bottom of it, where it's crimped and sealed up by the manufacturer, they poke a couple of holes in it. They take string out of the waistband of the, I'm pulling on my hands like you can actually see. They pull the string out of the waistband of the trousers that they wear, or They take the sheets, they shred them up, rip them up into long strands, and they tie that to it. Okay, they do it through all the different holes that they had poked, and that was their weight. They take that, it would be flat at that point, and they'd slide it out from under that cell. While it slid out, it drug all the string out from underneath it. Another guy, he'd send his out. Now this took practice, okay? But I promise you, they had ample time to do it. But once I walked past the cell and I was moving on, that guy knew I wasn't paying attention to that cell anymore for as long as it was going to take for me and my partner to make our round. So they could start practicing at that point. They'd slide it out, pull it back. Slide it out, pull it back. The only one who really could see it was the picket boss. Now the picket boss, bang on the glass, they'd alert you. If you went back and made that your attention, that took away from the time of the day. And I've already talked about how difficult it could be to serve chow, move the guys around. You had to prioritize. All right? That was one of the things that kind of went by the wayside. It is what it is. So they practiced with that, slide it out from under the floor. If they were getting ready to pass something, let's say it's a ramen noodle soup. They bust the bag up, not enough to break the actual bag, but they break it up where it's in pieces. Chips, cookies, whatever you're saying. Jesse, you can't slide a thing of cookies under there. They take the same ramen noodle bag, empty it out, put cookies in it. They use toothpaste, damn it. They'd use toothpaste to seal up this ramen noodle bag. They would tie the string around it to where it's good and flat. They'd send the hook out. Guy would send his out, and the lines would get tangled. The guy that originally sent his, he'd stand there and wait. The guy that sent his out, the second one, once the lines were tangled up, he would pull it. And the guy in the inside cell would let his line go out, and what was attached to it would go out under the door. And it'd go down the floor, and the guy would eventually pull it into his cell. It took practice, but this was how the guy in cell 4 could get a soup over to cell number 2. Now let's say the guy in cell 1 owes cell number 7 a debt, and he bet him 3 soups. He'd make a line long enough, tie 3 soups onto it. He'd send it out. Guy in cell 3, he'd send his line out, snag it, pull it over to his cell. He'd send it out as far as he could. Guy in cell 5 would send his out, and they would work it down the tier like that. They had to be careful about it. A lot of times this went on at night shift, or if they knew it was going to go on, once we got over to another section, those guys would do some kind of a distraction. Jack the slot, fake a suicide, medical, something where they knew it was going to take extra time for us to get there. And then they'd start sliding things under the door. They could do the same thing with magazines, books, letters. They poke holes in it, send it on down. I can't show you what that looks like, unfortunately, because, well, I don't have the setup for that. And there's not a whole lot, any videos that I know of that show it actually taking place. But this is how a lot of that would get passed on down. And it could be anything. Guy's short on toilet paper or soap. Guy would roll up a bunch of toilet paper, have some soap in the middle of it. They'd send that on down. That's how they pass around hygiene products. So this was a way to get, these items aren't going to hurt anybody. Yeah, they could make something out of the soap, but they didn't. They wanted that soap to be able to wash with. They had plenty of other items to make weapons out of than soap. They weren't trying to carve fake pistols like you saw in Ernest Goes to Jail, if anybody's seen that movie, or knives carved out of soap. As soon as your hands get sweaty, it suds up, and it's just absolutely no good. It wasn't viable. They wanted the soap to actually wash with. So that's how they would get those items to it. And they could pass just about anything that would go under that door. Other kinds of foods, other tubes of toothpaste, shampoo, anything at all. They could get bowls from commissary, cups, things like that. They obviously couldn't pass stuff like that, but the little things, they'd move it all around. If it needed to get down from tier 2 to 1, they'd... Okay. The door that slid, if you look back at my... Get my hand over to... Damn it, backwards. If you look at my bathroom door, it's got that gap in it, okay? When that door closes, that's going to be sealed up. However, if I took that door off of its hinges and propped it up, there's going to be a gap from where the frame and the door is. That's essentially how the sliding doors were in SEG. They weren't inside of a frame. They would slide. And when they slid back, there was just enough of a gap, yay, so much, that things could be passed through. About the size of a magazine. I saw it get passed all the time. If cell 3 wanted to pass a magazine over to cell 2, and I'm walking by and guy asked me, would I hand him that magazine? Did I do it every now and again? Absolutely. Were there times I got something in return? Did I get a day of rec? Did I get a 2 days worth of shower that I didn't have to do for that cell? Absolutely. Was that right? Nope. Did I do it? Fuck yeah, I did. Gotta do what you gotta do in that dirty ass job. So with that crack in the door, these guys would take their line and they could shoot it out and it would dangle over where the tier was. And you had this long walkway and it had bars running straight across. That was to keep you from falling over. I think they were probably about belly high. They weren't very high. You could easily get pushed over one. And in fact, a lot of times that did happen. So they take that and they throw that toothpaste tube out over it and it would hang down. And if it worked, one of the guys down below would say out some kind of a code word, something that they had already worked out. Hey! You know, a 3-syllable sound, 2-syllable, 4-syllable, something imperceivable that would just sound like noise to anybody else. But to this guy, that was the signal. He'd lower it down until he'd send out another signal. That meant he had paid out enough line, meaning sent out enough and the thing was dangling low enough. He'd then take his, he'd send it out, and he'd try to snag it. If the guy had enough line, he could dangle it all the way down to where it was on the floor. This guy would send his line out and he would snag it. This took a lot of line, a lot of the string. He'd start pulling it toward it. And then the guy would let him know when the object was at the door. At that point, it would come out the door, and then he'd have to carefully pull it so it could work itself up the stanchion, flip down, and then it would hit the deck. All right. And then he could pull it into his cell, and now cell number 13 got an object down to cell number 6. Easy. When you got nothing but time to work on this stuff, the guys perfected it. It didn't take a day worth of training, okay? A day they'd break lines, lose stuff. They had to try it over and over and over again. But this was the time that these guys had to do. So this is how they would fish and traffic and trade. Folks, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'm going to post a disclaimer at the start of this video. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only. If there are current COs that are watching this that are just absolutely fuming that I'm putting out this information that people could watch and use, guys, you must have been in the system for a week now, because I promise you, this is well known. It's documented. It's shown in training videos in multiple different academies. Inmates who don't know this, or ones that have been in the system for a week, or COs who don't know it, haven't watched enough around them to see what's actually going on for that. And I'm not saying that to call anybody out. I'm just saying this shit happens. It goes on. I did the best I could to prevent it. Now I'm presenting it out here so the individuals who enjoy these videos, they can listen and see what goes on here. And for any new ones who are getting ready to get into it, this stuff goes on. Everything I'm saying on here is true. I saw it. I dealt with it. I promise you, if you're on the job for longer than a month, you're going to experience and go through this as well. Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for checking out this video. If you got the time, check out the other video channel. Again, Prison Talks with Jesse. It's audiobook style. If you're driving down the road or if you get ready to go in the kitchen and cook something, click that little play button, let it start playing, listen to the stories I have to tell. Likewise with these channels. If you're getting ready to drive somewhere, or you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, or whatever you're doing around the house, I'm going to show some other videos of some contraband you can make at home. Disclaimer, entertainment purposes only, don't attempt. But you can start the videos and just listen to all the entertaining things I have to say. Happy Friday. Enjoy y'all's weekend. Take care.